All right, Stephanie, we have some major developments on tonight's Dynamite. The Owen Hart tournament is complete, and the All-In card at Wembley's taking shape. We have Bryan Danielson challenging Swerve Strickland, assuming he holds the title at that point. Seems like it's heading that direction. And Mariah May winning the Owen Cup and attacking Toni Storm at the end of the show. Which of those two developments surprised you, if either of them did?
I think the ending surprised me. That was absolutely brutal, what Mariah did to Toni. I didn't think they were going to go there that soon. I thought Mariah was going to win the tournament, but I thought they'd maybe take a couple of weeks of like playing out them splitting up. But her just turning on her like that and attacking her so viciously was rather shocking, because I kind of felt like maybe I'm just like thinking with AEW maybe not being the most female friendly company, that because it was a women's main event, I was like, well, I bet they're going to end with like more Hangman or more Jericho or something. But no, they ended with probably one of the most like violent women's segments we've seen in the company so far.
So the women's, do you think it's positive or negative from the women's wrestling side of AEW that they did that angle after the main event match?
I think it's really positive. I really do. It's like a proper development for the division. Like the division has been getting so much better. We have multiple storylines. Like even in this match alone, you have the storyline of Mariah and Toni, and you have the storyline of Willow and Chris and Stokely in the background. And then you have everything going on with Mercedes and Britt. But yeah, I thought it was very positive to end on a women's angle that I don't think will be forgotten quickly. That image of Toni, and look, I'm not the biggest fan of the Toni Storm character at all. I find her like very grating, but her overacting in that character really worked for that ending, like bloody scene. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm glad they did the angle now. I wanted this to get, I just wanted the lines drawn. Like, I like that Mariah May got what she wanted, and then afterwards just went after Toni Storm and said, yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term, shit's on. We're going to war. And it was brutal and it was intense. I think it raised the level of the match. It's not the only way they could have done it. I mean, it totally could have. In my mind, I was not expecting that. So I was expecting Mariah and Storm with the ambiguity of, will it be a fair fight or not? And one of them would cheat to break the other's heart. And the whole hype leading into the event would be, are they going to remain friends? And if not, who's going to turn on whom? And I thought they would send out maybe some red herrings and false signals. Doesn't have to be that way, but that's kind of what I was expecting. And instead, it's just set up. So, I mean, does this, maybe this is a dumb question, but does this officially set up Toni Storm as an official babyface now?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think you have to cheer Toni Storm and boo Mariah May after what she did, like 100%. I'm really intrigued to see how they play this with Mariah. Like, I'm intrigued to see what her explanation will be. Like, I want her to say that she was disingenuous all along with Toni, and I'd have to think more in this, but I'd like her to work something into like the kind of weirdness of Toni Storm's character and like almost pointing it out, like, yeah, I took advantage of this like properly unhinged woman and it's going to get me the title or something like that. Like, I'm excited to hear what Mariah has to say of why she did this and what has been her plan since day one.
Yeah, I hope that, I mean, it could take a number of formats, and I guess it just depends on how confident they are with Mariah's delivery. And I'm curious if Toni Storm, you said her character is too cartoonish, too over the top, however you phrased it. Having this happen to her could actually be an opportunity, a window for her to move her character into a different place. It doesn't mean she can't have, I enjoy her character, but I totally understand the criticism of it too. I enjoy it. I think we're to believe she's in on the joke, but also is delighted in playing the role, and it is sort of an alter ego. I think she should break character for this. I don't want her with the accent and the old movie mannerisms to dominate and turn something very personal and violent into still part of a cartoon. So it doesn't mean change her character entirely, but I like the idea of her. I don't want her to say, like a trite line, let's get real, or I'm going to break character. Like, don't do anything, but have it just cross a line into, okay, there's a real nuanced person who's not a caricature behind this persona and this alter ego.
I think she's either going to do that or it's going to venture into some kind of like Betty Davis type, whatever happened to Baby Jane, like horror style character, which might be even like worse than what she's doing now. Like, I don't think she can continue on with the like tits up, tits out, look out for the shoe, all that stuff after this has happened to her with Mariah. But it would be nice to see her be like a little bit normal now, or almost like, because she kind of snapped into this character after All In last year and what happened to her losing the title there. Hikaru Shida like losing the match there with Saraya being in, like, this was kind of the beginning of her descent into this. So this, I think, could either go one or two ways. Like you said, it could kind of like snap her out of it and see her revert back more to like normal Toni Storm. Or I could see her taking this like even further and move from like, this kind of Sunset Boulevard, All About Eve into like a Baby Jane style, like scary character too. That will be a lot of overacting that I'll probably not like.
Yep, fair enough. So look past All In and Mariah May and Toni Storm. What does this set up for both? Because they're so tied together as characters, and so what happens at All In, and it doesn't mean they don't have rematches, but do you see a future for both of these characters separate from each other? There to be not exploited, but to be built upon.
I think at All In, I see Mariah winning the title just because it is London. That is where she's from. I see Toni, this character, because it will have been a year and it's such an extreme character, I'm not sure like how much legs it will have left once she has the match with Mariah, because it always felt like she was doing the kind of challenge of the month thing. You had people like Serena Deeb that were necessarily well built up, and what she had with Mariah has been the most consistent, like the biggest storyline. They're actually telling something there. So I think that after these two have the match, I can see another match taking place. But once their feud is over, I can see Toni maybe having to drop this character if it maybe means like going away for a little bit and coming back as more regular Toni Storm. And Mariah, I don't know what she'll move into, but I think she's someone that can play a really great heel. And I can see her like expanding outside this little universe that she just has at the minute with Toni and Mina and Per Luther, who also got it this tonight as well.
Yes. The crowd response for Luther getting beat up. I mean, I believe we're going to have an on-site correspondent joining us to talk about what it was like in the arena tonight. Hopefully that goes through as scheduled. The crowd was like, they were upset with what happened to Toni Storm, but they were really upset with what happened to Luther, it seemed like.
Yeah, I get that. He's been very, very good in this role. Like Luther, it's been kind of stealing a paycheck for 5 years until they found this butler role for him with Toni Storm, and it has really worked out. So it was shocking that she turned on Luther too, because you could have, it may have been like more obvious to have Luther like in on it and with Mariah actually, but no, it was just Mariah against the both of them. But the crowd reaction was it was like how I felt at home, because I was kind of like, when Mariah won, I was like, oh, okay then. And then like she started attacking her, and I almost like had one eye off the TV. And then I was like, hang on, this is not just a normal post-match beatdown. This is really brutal. And it's very interesting how they do this like within the Owen Hart tournament setting, because it's such it's a lovely idea of the tournament, right? For like the Owen Hart Foundation and everything that goes with that, and having Dr. Martha Hart there, who came out for the men's final. But then like this, wow, what a what an ending to the tournament in the women's division there.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, let's pause and formally introduce ourselves in the show, and then we'll talk about the men's final, which we touched on in the intro, and then we'll have some video caller interaction, and also chat room interaction and mailbag contributions. So this is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, June 10th, 2024. I am Wade Keller, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. That's PWTorch.com. I hope you're checking it out, not just for my reporting and writing, but also our great contributors. We're always looking for new contributors, by the way. If you like writing about pro wrestling and want to volunteer to kind of help us out and round out our coverage, whether it's WWE, AEW, NXT, Ring of Honor, anything like that, if you want to do editorials, TV reports, TV show analysis, just drop me a line. Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com is our email address, and you are very much invited to volunteer to contribute and help us out. That is kind of the gateway, by the way, for many of our co-hosts and podcast hosts who do various podcasts as part of the PW Torch lineup. Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. You can also, by the way, use that email address to contribute to tonight's show or any live post show here on the PW Torch YouTube channel. Just email Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. That's a good way for you, one, if you want to say more than you can say in the chat room, because obviously the chats just run off the screen sometimes, and I try to read all of them, but don't necessarily get to all of them. And you can be a little more elaborate in your comments and questions. Also, if you don't watch us live, when you email us, that means you can still be part of the show and then listen back later to see if your email made it onto the show. The other way to join us is to be a PW Torch VIP member or a PW Torch Patreon supporter. And if you do so, we give you a code, an invite code, so that you can be part of the show as a video caller. You're also welcome to turn off the camera. A lot of you just would rather do audio, like our Blog Talk Radio days, and that's fine too. That is right now posted on the PW Torch VIP Patreon page. It's also posted in my TV report at pwtorchvip.com in the Dynamite TV report. I cover Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night, respectively, and put the invite code in my reports at the top and bottom. So that is a way, if you're wondering how people get to be on the show, that is how they do it. And we love first-time video callers. We love to hear from some old names. So consider yourself formally invited if you've got something to say or want to ask some questions of us. I also will keep an eye on the chat room. Everybody's invited to join the chat room. If you are watching us on Twitter, you're invited to go to our YouTube page and join the chat. That's at youtube.com/PWTorch. That's youtube.com/PWTorch. And join us in the chat. And everybody, while you're at it, subscribe to our channel. Greg Parks and I recorded a 12-minute hot take discussing potential John Cena WrestleMania opponents, and we just kind of riffed on some pros and cons, different names that might come up. That is on the and super chats are invited. Those are turned on. So if you want to pretty much guarantee that we'll put your chat on the screen if it's appropriate, of course, and even slightly relevant. That's a nice way to be part of the show. Make sure you stand out in the chat, and also just contribute to what we're doing here. Give us a little tip in the tip jar. All right. The other face you see if you're watching us live, and the other voice you hear if you're listening to us on the podcast side of things. By the way, search Wade Keller in your podcast app if you want to get the audio version of not only the post shows, but also our main podcast feed. 2 logos pop up when you search Wade Keller, the blue logo, the red logo. Subscribe to both. The blue logo right now is not on YouTube, but it includes yesterday's flagship episode with Greg Parks. Over an hour and a half of analysis on AEW and WWE, a ton of current events covered there, emails too. And if you subscribe to the red logo show, that gives you podcast access to these post shows, but also other content exclusive to the podcast feed. So with that said, the other voice and face is from Stephanie Chase, PW Torch YouTube guest and a analyst of professional wrestling for years. Stephanie, you attended 2 big events these last 2 weeks. We got to get into that a little bit as the show progresses. I know that you wrote about that on Substack. So first of all, back to you. I want to give you a chance to say hello to everybody and welcome back to the co-host chair.
Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for having me, Wade. This is one one heck of a Dynamite to return on. But yeah, as she said, I've been covering wrestling for quite a while, and yeah, I'm just coming off. I've had a lot to catch up on because I'm just coming off the Money in the Bank weekend here in Toronto, and before that, I did Forbidden Door over in Long Island. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of wrestling the past couple of weeks.
Yes, we will get into that a little bit later as we delve into the show. We want to focus on tonight's Dynamite, at least in the first segments here. But yeah, we've had a fun stretch. But you're right, this is a really good Dynamite to comment on. We got quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too much further because we know a lot of people don't watch the whole show. You know, people have things that interrupt them. Tell people how they can support what you do and see more and hear more and read more of what you do covering pro wrestling if they enjoy your commentary here on this show.
Yeah, well, you can go onto X and follow me at Stephanie M. Chase, and that's where I promote everything. And over here on YouTube, I'm at Stephanie Chase Wrestling. I've already put up a little short with Chelsea Green, but I've got like a 5-minute interview with her that I recorded before Money in the Bank that is going to go up probably tomorrow. And then I have a Substack as well that you can find just it's like stephaniechase.substack.com, where, as we had mentioned, I wrote a lengthy article comparing my time at Money in the Bank and Forbidden Door, both in a live perspective and also a little bit of like a behind the curtain perspective of going to these events as media too, if you're interested in that. And then later this week as well, I have a podcast coming out that I recorded at Money in the Bank weekend with John Pollock and Wei Ting from Post Wrestling, Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, and Benno from Grapple, where we discuss wrestling media. So you'll be able to find that on the Post Wrestling feed, and I'm going to put it on my Substack feed as well. So yes, you can support me by sharing and liking all those things and giving me a follow.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that. I always love pro wrestling media discussions. Well, I mean, almost always. Maybe
almost.
You know, there's something not to like. Yeah, no, I'm joking. All right, very good. Well, let's pivot back to the men's final, and then we'll start going we'll start bringing on video callers and other ways to interact with our listeners. So Bryan Danielson wins. It was my pick. Not so much a prediction because I thought it could go either way. I'm not going to say I predicted it. I think most people were thinking it was going to be Hangman because of the Swerve Hangman rivalry, especially with Hangman cutting the promo that they dropped on social media last week. Very much still bringing up what Swerve did, invading his house. And that he hasn't gotten over it. Now it looks like that promo was portending them being on opposite sides of the blood and guts match. So it served a purpose to rev that up again. I picked or preferred Danielson against Swerve. I think it is a statement, historically significant and statement match for Swerve's title reign. And it makes the title the centerpiece of the match. And I talked about this on the Wade Keller hotline for VIP members earlier today. I did about, close to 20 minutes of analysis and reaction to things going on in wrestling, but also news. I talked about the new WWE announcer insight onto how we got his job and why. Some details on John Cena's retirement tour that I don't think has been reported either. But in that, I talked about Hangman and his promo and how I didn't like the idea of Hangman versus Swerve at All In being about a personal blood grudge. I wanted it about the title. And so I think it's great for Danielson in his last full-time year. We can tell the story now for a few weeks. Will Danielson win the world title in his one of his final big stadium matches of his full-time career? It's kind of a discussion Greg Parks and I had in the 12-minute hot take about Cena and WrestleMania. You know, do you want him in a title match? If so, against whom? And will people want to see him win a title in his final match? So I think that's a fresher story to tell, but you can, in the meantime, tell the blood and guts story with Hangman and Swerve separate from that. So that's my case for it, and I think they did a really good job tonight, making me even more in favor of that decision that I was in favor of or hoping it would happen anyway. Stephanie, your thoughts?
Well, firstly, please no title for John Cena. But secondly, I think my feelings on this one are kind of complicated. Firstly, I thought it was like an absolutely incredible match. One of my favorites on Dynamite so far this year. I wanted Hangman to win. And I agree with like everything you've said about Danielson and Swerve, that that will be about the title. There's a great story that we can tell with Danielson in his last year. But just since Hangman has come back, I really feel that Hangman to me is the centerpiece of AEW. Like it's Hangman's story, and now he's come back. He's like more vicious than we've ever seen him before. He's properly a heel. It's so interesting, and the past couple of weeks have been really good. And I think that he is the missing puzzle piece for me. Like it wasn't MJF's return; it was Hangman needing to be there, and his rivalry with Swerve is so intense, and so I don't know, it just completely grips me that I would love to see that put on the stage of Wembley. And it would also be the complete opposite to the Wembley main event we got last year, which I really hated because it was like the biggest show of the year, and it was these two comedy friends that had tagged before wrestling, and they didn't seem to care about the title as much as their friendship, and I hated all that. So and Swerve, the title means a lot to him, and Hangman facing him for that and trying to take that away from him, I think would be really great. But then I also think that it's kind of good that Hangman didn't win it, because that can build to something even greater when he finally gets the solo match with Swerve that isn't on the Wembley stage. I have like the fear that they could turn it into a three-way, which would be terrible.
I fear that always. It's never ending. I just fear three ways. Usually triple threat or three ways are a crutch because the booker doesn't believe the one-on-one match is enough. There's other reasons too, but I usually see it as a crutch. And sometimes it's just to avoid doing a clean finish because of the stupid, once you add a third person, we can't have rules, which it's easy to not do that. So I don't think that's going to happen here, though. I don't. I mean, maybe later, but not at Wembley. Don't you look you look way more relieved than you should be for me guessing, but I appreciate it.
I think you're making a very educated guess. I just have the scare of the three-way, because I do not think what will Hangman do at Wembley, because he needs a big match as well, and he's so like laser focused on Swerve that I don't see an avenue for him right now. The match was really good at making you think either guy could win. Another fear I had was was McGuinness being on commentary. Yes. I feared that he would do something to cost Danielson the match and then get the match at Wembley, which I really don't think would have been a good use of Danielson. So that was good as well. So I do have mixed feelings, and I think that they'll maybe subside a bit after Blood and Guts, and I see a direction for Hangman for Wembley. But I am happy that Danielson won, and I do think that Danielson is he's never wanted to be the guy in AEW. He's always wanted to like take more of a step back than I would personally let him if I was paying him.
Yep.
But putting him putting him on that big stage with Swerve is either going to be a huge moment of Danielson finally being AEW champion in what are the last couple of months of his full-time career, or it's going to be a huge statement for Swerve Strickland as the guy, because not only did he just beat Ospreay, he will then have beaten Bryan Danielson, like one of our like modern living legends in the game. So it is a match that I'm very excited for, and yeah, I have no problems with Danielson winning, even though I wanted Hangman.
Yeah, I think this legitimizes Swerve Strickland's title reign to the point where I think no matter what happens in that match, people who don't want Swerve to be pushed out of having a legit historically significant title reign, as opposed to being seen as kind of like Damian Priest is. Well, we gave him the belt, but it was to tell a story to get somewhere else. It's not. Iron Sheik was a transitional champion. Priest isn't. Joe wasn't. I think they held the belt long enough to get past that categorization as I look at that term. But if Swerve headlines against Bryan Danielson, win or lose, after what he's done so far, I think Tony Khan's in a safe space to move on from that if he wants to. Doesn't have to. He's got a lot to pick from with MJF, Okada, Hangman Page, Ospreay. Plenty of top choices for him to go to for a world title run after Swerve. But to me, that we just put the graphic up on our YouTube stream here. it feels real now. It doesn't feel like, well, we gave Swerve the title because we felt we had to. The fans picked him, but we can't wait to figure out a way to get it off of him, to get it onto somebody who's paid more with more acclaim, who's had better matches in Japan or the indie scene. So, so I'm good with that. How did you feel about Swerve's promo tonight? I didn't like it. I thought it was a little bit too all over the place. I thought he tried to cover too many bases. It wasn't awful, but I think he's trying to lean a little heel with Danielson, while at the same time trying to be the babyface opposite of Hangman in the Team AEW versus Team Elite Blood and Guts match. And there was just something that didn't really have a flow to it. So I was a little, I don't know, just kind of about it. And he's been more hit than miss lately, but he's still not a top tier promo, consistent enough for me where I'd be like, Tony's crazy to take the belt off of him after All In. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a little flat. It was kind of just him. The way they set it up, kind of going to break and then him coming to the ring, like I expected more to happen than him just cut the promo. It was kind of just like, oh yeah, that Bryan Danielson just won, and here I am to talk about it. So it was a little flat in that sense. I do like when he leans into more of the heelish side, which is something that he could definitely do effectively if his opponent was Hangman, because Hangman is going so far that he'll come off good next to him. But it will be interesting to see how he plays his character against Danielson, though Danielson's very good at like flip-flopping between face and heel himself. But yeah, I thought it was a little flat. But I did kind of like that he didn't make too much of anything like about Hangman, because I think that's good for that story of like Hangman having the obsession. So yeah, it was okay, not his best, and I just thought maybe the structure and like placement of it was a little weird. And I almost thought after it that maybe this whole thing should have been the main event and it would have felt more impactful, but I take back that thought now that I've seen what they did do at the end of the show.
Yeah. All right, very good. Let's pivot to our video callers. Again, if you are live streaming our show and you are not a VIP member, but you'd like to be a video caller, full details on becoming a VIP member, tons of great content, 35 plus years of podcasts, newsletter archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 1990s, including my old KFAN radio show in the early 90s, a format similar to this, but audio only, of course, because it was radio, interviewing some big names, big time promoters at that time, live caller format. It's a blast to go through those hundreds of retro radio shows from that era. We also run just about every day, on average, about one or two a day, our 18 years ago VIP podcast. We were a pioneer in podcasting. We called them audio shows because we were doing them before the word podcast became a word. And you can go all the way back to 2003, I think, is when we started with our pay-per-view roundtables and some great historical context and real-time reporting on what was going on in the mid 2000s there with the rise of John Cena and so much else. So full VIP membership is available, pwtorch.com/govip. The top tier gets you access to our library, our ad-free website, customization of our RSS feed into different groups of podcasts. You can also take a lower tier, go through Patreon or using your Apple account and also become a member. Patreon members and full VIP members have access to that code to become a video caller on our post shows here on YouTube. And so if you are jonesing to be on the show and want to contribute in that way, that's the route to take. All right, so let's begin with Derek from Utah. You'll be up first, and then Scott from Tampa, stand by. We'll get to you after that. Derek, good to see you. Good to hear from you again. What is on your mind? I'm always eager to hear what you have to say about these shows and Dynamite in particular.
First of all, I thought the show pacing was better tonight, and it just has been better the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's been like a complaint made by me, made by others, that AEW doesn't tell good stories. And I don't think that's always true. I just think they tell so many stories that they don't have a lot of stories that resonate in your memory at the conclusion of a show. And I think the way that they paced the show tonight, where they had a big, long match, but they let it breathe. They let like some afterthought or some follow-up happen after the match, and then they went to the next segment. It's just now we're looking at a 2-hour show, and I feel like I can actually remember everything that occurred on the show. And maybe it's just me. Yeah. Maybe I have early onset dementia, But a lot of AEW shows I watched in the past, so many things happen at the end. I'm like, what was important? And I can't answer it. Tonight, I felt like there was two things that were really important and some other things that continued stories. So do you guys feel the same way about the show pacing? Is it too fast, too slow, or are they finding that Goldilocks position of just right?
I've long talked, Stephanie, about something I heard decades ago now, that Kevin Dunn was a big proponent of he'd probably deny that I don't know. Maybe he went to, I don't know. But it was a 2.5 rule that Kevin Dunn had pitched, which is we want our viewers to be thinking about 2.5 things at the end of any of our shows. There's two main things, and then something else, for those who are paying attention, kind of a third thing that clearly is less important. But he didn't want to go beyond that. Everything else was laying the foundation or supporting or filler. But he wanted, and I'm sure Vince McMahon was part of this too, and the writing team at the time, but it's like 2.5. What are the 2.5 things we're going to stress? Now, that doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule, but Derek, you just talked yourself right into saying Dynamite basically got there. Two main things tonight, and then a few other things, and it's sort of a pick 'em for what that half would be. But I'm with you. I will say during the Will Ospreay interview, about 7 minutes into the show, I looked at the clock and I said, "This is kind of the sweet spot where I think you should wrap up." And then he went a couple more minutes. So when you mentioned, what did I think or what did we think of the pacing? My thought was, I still think some things could be shortened up a little bit. But it's more of thankfully it's more of a nitpick than a big picture criticism. This was a show that had two big finals anchoring it, several significant promo segments, some backstage angles and vignettes, and a really action-packed four-way match with some ramifications. So, and then the brawl with Joe and Jericho. So, to me, this is like, in a weird way, the maximum I would want to pack into what I would call a well-paced Dynamite. But it worked for me, and I'm largely with you. How about you, Stephanie?
I think the pacing was definitely better than last week. AEW does have a huge problem with not letting things breathe. And I was so mad last week after the Jeff Jarrett and Hangman match when they immediately went back to that Jericho hook beatdown. That just made me furious because they didn't let that breathe. And I felt that I get the 2.5 rule, but I also felt like last week, and I know not a lot of people agreed with me, that doing the Hangman return and showing that he was this fully heel character and then doing the MJF heel turn at the end of the show, I would have picked one or the other on that one, because I kind of felt watching it when Hangman came back that was should have been the big talking point of the show. And then when it ended with the MJF thing, everyone was talking about MJF, and I would have preferred Hangman to have his moment and separated them. And maybe we've had two really incredible Dynamites in a row, but I think there's something to be said of maybe we could have had 3 or 4 very, very good Dynamites in a row if we'd maybe split some things up as far as that goes. But this week's episode, I would still say there was maybe one too many things happening. So we had the end of last week, the big MJF turn, and then he opens this week with a promo and Will Ospreay, and I've pretty much forgotten that at this point because so much else happened. And then you had the Danielson and Hangman, huge match with huge implications and a very lengthy match that had a lot of storytelling in it, and a really important result. So I guess that's your one big thing. And then I think the next thing we had was the Jericho Samoa Joe match, where Samoa Joe was basically killed by Jericho, who seems to have done some kind of character shift that I'm sure we'll get into later. So you have that. And then I was thinking, okay, is that our second big thing? And then we end it with the massive women's angle. So I would still maybe have saved one of those things for next week. And then when you look at the upcoming card for next week, it's quite insane as well. And I just kind of wonder if sometimes I worry that AEW does things in little spurts. We're going to have 4 or 5 weeks in a row of really great Dynamites, and then we're going to go back to not, because they haven't spread things out properly. So pacing definitely better this week, more time to breathe for sure. But I still think maybe we were on one too many big angle to make them all feel super important. Because, I mean, how important is the Samoa Joe being like forklifted through a wall when Tony Storm got completely bloodied up as well at the end of the show?
Yeah, I mean, you make a case for them maybe crossing the line. I said they walked right up to the line of what I would consider, packing the show, but still qualifying as well paced. But when you think about, and by the way, that wall was so fake. Stop doing that, pro wrestling promoters. My God, whoever built that wall, if that wasn't meant to be a legit wall, that person should be like, they should lose their like license to hold a hammer and nails. My God, that was so. It's like worse than the crash pad.
That's what I was gonna ask you. What's worse, Jericho's fake wall or his crash pad he landed on when he fell off the cage? Like, what was faker?
Jericho's a complex figure. Someone in the chat room's like, why are you saying nice things about Kevin Dunn? Because Kevin Dunn was not 100% evil. Like Vince McMahon, evil ultimately. But there are things he deserves credit for, obviously. There's people who are, not everybody's just, if you don't have to take sides and just never give credit to somebody. And so with Jericho, same thing. Lot of controversy with him. But a lot of smart reinventions, great worker, made himself a star, all that. But my God, when it comes to props, he doesn't have a good self-editor. It's rough. This was, I mean, I have to go back and watch it, but I mean, it was just like it's like, they brought in like some fourth graders and just said, here's some 2x4s and sheetrock and let's see what you come up with. It was awful. All right, Derek, back to you.
And I want to go to what you guys mentioned in your comment about the thing that kicked off the show. And I was surprised because I think when we talked last week, we kind of assumed, given that Wembley, in my mind, and it seems like Stephanie mentioned in her mind as well, that's their biggest show of the year where you save the biggest matches for the biggest show. And I thought, what's the biggest match in AEW? To me, it's MJF versus Ospreay. And so when they said that that's next week, initially I was like, well, then it will just be a BS finish and it will lead to the pay-per-view. But then it felt like they set up a challenger in the four-way where Pac is going to challenge Ospreay at Wembley. And so I guess my question for you is, and maybe you know better than me, is I think sometimes we just kind of assume that AEW considers Wembley their biggest show of the year. Do you think that's what they consider it? Is it their flagpole show, or maybe they look at it more like it's just an ensemble of the shows they put on every year?
Stephanie, what do you think about that?
I think, well, this is only the second Wembley show, so it's kind of hard to answer that. But last year, myself and my friends from the UK, some of whom are podcasters, were like extremely critical of the Wembley build because we basically thought it was being treated like a Saudi Arabia show, a kind of exhibition show that's not really in canon because of just the complete lack of real build to it and people referencing it. There was like a famous moment where CM Punk basically came out on TV and was like, oh yeah, All In at Wembley, people should be talking about that. And we were at home going, yeah, like you should. And I think that they really failed to sell to North Americans the scale of Wembley as like an arena and what it would be like. And when I was complaining about the build to it, there was a lot of people that had never seen Wembley before basically being like, it's just another show. Like, what are you complaining about? That kind of thing. And then when they saw it, they were like, oh my gosh, okay, this is a huge show because obviously AEW never like properly showed you what Wembley looked like before All In to give you that on TV because why would you do that? Yeah.
Well, there's the other extreme, which is going to be showing like Philadelphia Stadium constantly leading up to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
There's a happy middle ground, everybody.
So I don't think from last year, and also there was a lot of like, bad booking last year where you had stuff like Kenny and like a multi-man match. I don't think that last year they were promoting it as their like WrestleMania flagship show. And I think if they're going to do Wembley every year, which I also don't think they should, they should promote it as their big show. I think AEW actually needs one show that is their WrestleMania that the year can kind of revolve around. And initially I would have said it was Double or Nothing, but I think that's kind of fallen flat as a concept too. And the idea of doing a show in Vegas every year just because you picked a gambling theme is not very productive either. So I think, I don't think that AEW does see All In as their absolute flagship show, but I think they do see this year's All In as the biggest show they're going to do this year, rightly after the success of last year's, if that makes sense.
I think tonight's Dynamite, there's a criticism, is they're also trying to promote Blood and Guts and Dynamite 250 and trying to set things up for All Out. And there is a lot going on. I mean, Derek, this isn't undercutting your initial point, because I think, this did have some major things that stood out on the show. But it's part of the problem with Swerve's promo. It's just like, oh yeah, and Okada too. And it's like, whoa, what? And it's like, what does that mean? And then they let us know later, oh yeah, that's coming up on 250. I'm like, champion versus champion. We've been okay, I have to check myself, because a lot of us, me included, have been critical of Tony Khan for saving big matches for too long. And then sometimes not getting to him, Cody Rhodes. I mean, think of all the matches he could have had, CM Punk during his healthy time. So now he's getting to him. And so I want to at least fend off, if Tony Khan is listening or watching, or anyone who, is on his side on this, like, wait, you said that, now this. But that's a really big match to just throw out there in a way on a promo where you're like, wait, what does that mean? And then a graphic later, catches us up. It feels like that's more going to be an angle than a match. We'll see. I haven't had a chance to think it through all that much. Stephanie, your thoughts on that? And I saw Derek nodding, so then we'll throw back to him.
Yeah, I was completely shocked when they threw out the Okada thing. We've been thinking so much about Swerve first with Ospreay, then MJF returning, then Hangman. That's a lot. That's a lot of big names to think about your world champion against. And then he comes out there and is like, yeah, guys, and you forgot about Okada. Like, I could wrestle Okada. And then later in the show, they're like, yeah, let's just do it next week. And I think that, we have all been very critical of Tony Khan for not pulling the trigger on big matches. And now it's almost like he's going, well, I'll show you, because I'm going to do everything at once with not really a build. Like Swerve and Okada, I think, is Okada's another big challenger you could have down the line for Swerve, especially if you're going to keep the title belt on him for the next couple of months. So it does confuse me why they would just put it on this Dynamite. That it's not as if we were all sitting around going, hey, do you know that in July we're going to have the 250th episode of Dynamite? That's going to be a big celebration. It's just they sprung that on us too. So I thought that was very strange. And I'll be very interested to watch that match and see where it goes. But with what Swerve has on his plate right now, and you said earlier that his promo seemed a little bit maybe all over the place and unfocused. Now, really, I don't blame him, because that's a lot to think about. Thinking about a Danielson match, you've just had the Ospreay one. MJF's after you, Hangman's really after you. Oh, and you're going to wrestle Okada next week. What?
It kind of feels like WWE's promoting WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series all in a 6-week period. There's a lot they're trying to get out there, and I understand viewership has been rough. Tony Khan's facing reports from us and WrestleNomics about how the percentage of people who still have cable is down. It's down more the last couple of weeks than the yearly average, which is I don't know if it's always a pushback by AEW, but they kind of countered with that data after my report got circulated about on PWTorch.com last week about how what's it called? Not the composite rating. Now I forgot the term, but the fact that there's a rating out there that offsets Tony Khan going, well, our viewership is down because fewer people have cable. And the fact is that's also offset by WWE viewership going up. WrestleNomics had a great chart today or yesterday. I think this morning they put out showing, SmackDown, Raw, and NXT performing much better than AEW. AEW is stronger at 18 to 49. They're the ones who are dropping more cable more in a higher percentage than people who are in their 50s and older. So that's another pushback by AEW. But excuse, reason. Bottom line is that's going down. So I think Tony Khan wants to offset that narrative, especially after that 3-week stretch of 600 and 600 with a 500 in the middle. This is going to do it. I mean, I believe this will be a stretch of good numbers. But I think it is up for criticism that it's a little too much coming at us too quickly. But yeah, I'd rather have this than the other. But it does feel like a cluster of a lot coming at us. Derek, back to you.
Yeah, and from a perspective of someone who has not ordered the last few AEW pay-per-views, one of the reasons is I see the great matches on television, and so there was 2 matches I was really looking forward to Wembley that would push me over the edge to spend that $50 to pay for the pay-per-view, and those would be Ospreay and MJF, as well as Hangman Page and Okada. But tomorrow next week I get to see them for free. So, hey, $50 for me. Save it for me. But from a business strategy perspective, especially if you're going to highlight Wembley as kind of one of your bigger events, I don't know why you would give them away. So I will be interested to see if we do end up getting Ospreay versus MJF at Wembley, and if the match next week actually takes away some of the novelty from when you do it on the big stage in August. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with, just your perspective. Short question. Are we getting too much blood in AEW? I feel like it's losing its effect and losing its importance when we see it every single week, generally more than once.
Yes. Stephanie.
Yes, I would agree in the sense of that it loses its impact if you don't see it often. How many people bled on this week's show? Danielson did. I think Hangman did as well. I'm sure Joe must have after what he went through. And then Tony Storm's that probably should have been the only blood on the show really to like increase the impact of it. So yeah, I think there is too much blood in AEW because we are becoming very desensitized to it. And I think that the Tony Storm thing would have been like that more shocking if we weren't seeing blood every week on the show.
Fully agree. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking my call, guys, and you guys have a great Wednesday evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Always great. Always great hearing from you. Great contributions. All right, we'll go to Scott from Tampa and then Nick from Brattleboro making his video color debut. I'm excited for that. If you are joining us in progress and you want to be a video caller, all you have to do is go to PWTorchVIP.com as VIP member. Click on my Dynamite report. The code is in there, or as a Patreon subscriber supporter. We also posted that just as Dynamite was ending. All right, Scott, welcome. Good to talk to you, Scott from Tampa. What's on your mind about Dynamite tonight? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Great show again. It's kind of weird. I have you guys on the TV here, and I'm seeing my face, and it's kind of throwing me off. So it's a little strange, but a great show. Again, 2 weeks in a row, I posted in the chat that it's been a while since I've watched Dynamite back, start to finish in back-to-back weeks. So they're doing a great job of pacing the show, telling stories, good stories. I like the opening with the video package. Recapping, some highlights from MJF's promo from Saturday,
especially because so few people saw Collision. I mean, it went up against Money in the Bank, and the number was way down. And not actually, to AEW's credit, it wasn't down as much percentage-wise or number-wise as other head-to-head shows like Rumble and shows last fall. I reported all that at PWTorch.com earlier today. Everybody got that perspective up on how much of a drop off there was on Collision. I actually reported that yesterday. But yeah, I was hoping they would. When I was watching that promo, Scott, I was like, they better recap this on Dynamite because it was a hell of a promo. It forwarded a lot. It really laid things out. And I mean, they could have done more with it than they did, but they had a packed show. Anyway, Scott, back to you.
Yeah, because I didn't watch Collision, obviously. And I used to record it or have it on auto record on my DVR for several months, but I would never watch the show, and it was just, clogging up my space. So I stopped recording it. And so I was kind of upset that I didn't. I thought I had recorded it for, prior to the Saturday show, and but I didn't do it. So I didn't see the promo. So showing that, the snippets, I think helped a lot. The crowd tonight was very weak. I don't know if, I saw that you posted on the website that it was about 4,000 people in the arena. Sounded like half of that, but, Monday's Raw to me also sounded weak, so maybe it was just an Ottawa Calgary thing. I'm not sure, but the like I said, the stories are great, but that turn, the heel turn from Mariah May, was unexpected for me. I think it was obviously the right decision. I think because it's hard to boo Timeless Tony, and it looks like for the past few weeks that AEW, Tony Khan is finally putting the characters in the position that they should be in as face and heel. So just I want to get your thoughts because I missed the beginning of the show. You may have already addressed it, but what are your guys' thoughts on the Mariah May heel turn, and what do you guys expect the outcome would be at All In?
Yeah, so that was our A topic at the top of the show. And we explored it actually pretty in depth. Is there anything, Stephanie, you want to add? Scott, obviously you can go back and watch the beginning of the show when it goes up on demand.
Just like you, Scott, like we were shocked by the turn coming that way and the way that it did. And yeah, I think it was very interesting for Dynamite to end on such a big women's angle. And it's a huge story of AEW this year, how they have managed to turn their women's division around. And this was really like a high point for it. Like, we'll see how we get on afterwards and how the match with All In goes, how they tell the build up to that, and what happens once the Mariah Tony story that has really been holding up the division, how that plays out. But yeah, a huge moment and definitely unexpected for me as well.
And Scott, just in brief, I was happy they got to it right away because I just want to see the lines drawn. But I know JB in Detroit emailed and said he was surprised too. I'll just jump to it here. He said, I was not expecting Mariah to turn on Tony as soon as the night she won the Owen Hart tournament, but in hindsight, it makes sense as to why they main evented with the women's final over the men's. The crowd also seemed really invested in the turn, which is a good sign. Mariah throwing Luther off stage through a table, then holding up a battered and bloody Tony after beating her with her own shoe was a powerful visual to close the show. But as I said, they could have stretched it out. It could have been a fun story. Who's going to turn on whom? Will they really remain friends? I think it worked, though. And now it's a chance for Tony to really define her character. Now that something very serious has happened, does she have a serious side to her persona? I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, that's kind of what ran through my mind. She's sobbing and crying and doing the over dramatic, something that you would see, I guess, from a classic movie of someone just, their friend turning on them. And so I can see it going both ways, her still doing the black and white thing, but in a more, my heart's broken, or, maybe she's even more crazed out. She, like you said, she could maybe break away from that character and be more serious. So I look forward to seeing what story they tell. Just to recap on or to piggyback on what Stephanie said about the women's division, tightening up the past few weeks. I feel for the first time that the world title, the women's world championship, and the TBS championship are almost on an equal level, just because of the way that's a compelling story with compelling characters with Mercedes and Dr. Britt Baker, and also Timeless Tony and Mariah May. So real good job on with the AEW with what they're doing with the women's lately. The other topic I want to bring up is I thought Derek was going to touch on this more, but I am a little perplexed as to why they're doing MJF versus and Ospreay next week. I get it's a 250th episode of Dynamite, but it's for that the international title that no one really cares about. And so I started thinking in my mind, like, are they really going to go with Ospreay or MJF and Garcia for All In, which I don't think is a very compelling match. And do we just get a rematch? I just, that to me is just kind of weird. I don't understand, but I guess I'll just have to wait and see. I don't know if you have any feedback or thoughts on that.
AEW definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a setup for. Sorry, I'm talking.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I was just gonna say that they do have form of giving you this match you've been waiting for on TV and then doing it again at the pay-per-view. But it's interesting that you mentioned Daniel Garcia, because that was my other thought of, are they finally going to do something huge with Daniel Garcia? Because if MJF was to beat Ospreay next week, take the international title, and then it would be great justice for Daniel Garcia to be the one that takes it off MJF at All In. But I'm just not totally convinced that they want to go that far with Daniel Garcia, and I think it would take a lot, quite a few weeks of really good storytelling to get Garcia to that level. And I'm not sure that MJF is the opponent to lift Garcia up in that way. I don't think he's as good as bringing people up to his level as he is to rising to someone else's level. If you know what I mean, he can rise to a CM Punk or Jericho, but he's not good at lifting other people up. But it's an interesting one. But I felt at the same time, I felt that is so like AEW to give you that TV match that we've all thought was coming at the pay-per-view.
I think it's got to be more of an angle than a match. It feels like too much of a giveaway. You know, it's the beginning of something. And I haven't thought through. Dynamite gave us a lot to talk about on the show. I haven't thought through what they might do with that, but I mean, it's champion versus champion. No, that's the other match. There's so much going on. Okada and Ospreay. So I'm trying to think like what the. Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, do you have any theory, Scott, on what the angle, what they would do in that match to set up a rematch? Because this is it does. I mean, I know they want to make that show feel special, but man, if that's going to be a big match at Wembley, and I think it's going to be still, even with this announcement, because I think Garcia is something to say for All Out or a different time. I don't think that. I don't think Danny Garcia. I love Danny Garcia as a roster member, as a guy top of the second tier. Good, going to get a good match. I very much like him as a babyface. I don't think he's at the level that they're pushing him. And I agree with Stephanie. I don't think MJF. Well, it's part MJF what Stephanie says, but it's also part just Garcia's just not there yet. And they're talking about him as a backbone and all that. He's not there yet. Don't over push him where people resent it. If the card is loaded and they make it work, great. I mean, I'm open to it. But to me, it seems like MJF Ospreay makes more sense with the lay of the land. And so I'm thinking next week, or the 250 show is setting up a reason for a rematch.
I don't think it's going to be a full-fledged match either. I have two thoughts or two ways they could go about it. It could be the classic MJF, pull, I'm swerving you, and maybe he just attacks him and beats him up, leave him bloody. I mean, that's AEW's, theme is blood every week, like Derek was saying. So he could do that and, just set the intensify the feud. And then, or another option could be, maybe they start the match and Callis, cost Ospreay the match, or just interferes in some type of way, in a way of trying to recruit MJF to his family. I don't know if that's. I don't like that because I don't want MJF. MJF has been a part of too many cliques and too many factions sure. buddies. And so I don't want that at all. But that's something they could do. That I'm just throwing out that maybe but I agree with you both that I don't think it's going to be a full-fledged match. At least I hope not.
Some people are predicting in the chat room a time limit draw and go 30 minutes and then there's a reason for it. And someone else suggested a Dynamite Diamond Ring and then Tony Khan books a rematch. We'll see. I mean, that's why we watch. But I'll put it this way: I don't think I'll be happy just seeing one MJF Ospreay match. I mean, that's a really cool match. So I'm not like, oh, if you give it to us once, now the novelty is over. Right? I think those two can elevate their feud to a level where you want to see a rematch. It won't feel played out after one match. Scott, what else, if anything?
At least they, like you said, they're keeping us. That's why we watch, and it's a good thing. I'm looking forward to next week again. It'll be 3 weeks in a row watching the show start to finish. Lastly, I'll leave you guys with this. Someone that brought this up, or folks were talking about it in the chat last week, Hangman versus Okada. And originally I thought, I don't know, because the heel turn that Hangman just had, but just seeing them face to face tonight, in that interaction, I just felt something, and I was like, I do think that is intriguing. It could possibly lead to a double turn, perhaps with not really a double turn, because since Hangman's already healed, but possibly Okada, his fans do not want to boo him anyway. And I think Hangman obviously has a history with it being in the elite. I don't think it's working with Okada being there with them. So Perhaps, I do think that would be a great match and a great story for All In. But what do you guys think of that turn, and maybe Okada losing and then he being replaced in the Elite by Hangman?
Stephanie, yeah, talk about what Scott brought up, and also just include your thoughts on the chemistry with Okada, and if, in particular, if it'd be too soon to break him away and have Hangman join the Bucks, and then have Okada turn babyface and leave them.
I feel like Scott's just put a great idea in my head. So thank you, Scott. What I was saying earlier about Hangman losing the match and me being worried about who his opponent was for Wembley and not being able to think of someone. Maybe Okada is the guy, because now I'm thinking, because Hangman has joined the Elite's team for Blood and Guts, something could happen in that match where he's maybe about to get Swerve and it's Okada's fault that he doesn't get it. A bit like, remember the second Blood and Guts when Eddie Kingston thought he had Jericho and Claudio ruined it for him and they never followed up on that. Well, imagine if you did something like that and you actually followed through on the angle you were setting up. Because Hangman is only playing with the Elite so he can get to Swerve, and I really like that aspect. Okada, it's so strange to have him in this comedy role because he's Okada, and his matches that we've seen him do in AEW have been way toned down from New Japan Okada. So I think rather than a double turn, if you got Hangman so mad that he didn't get Swerve, he can't have Swerve at Wembley. We need to kind of separate them for a bit before we do their big match. Then get Hangman on the path to Okada, and then I think you could have a great match at Wembley where Okada is finally in full Rainmaker form in AEW in the ring, and he doesn't necessarily have to. No one necessarily has to do a turn because Hangman doesn't actually like the Elite anyway. They're both heels, but I think that moment could then lead to Okada maybe splitting away from the Elite. But yeah, if I could pick an opponent for Hangman right now at All In, I think it would be Okada, and I think it would be doing some version of the storyline I just kind of laid out there.
Yeah, cool. Scott, any follow up on that?
No, everything Stephanie said is what I agree with. I think it would be a great match, like I said, and a great story. So I'm gonna sign off now. You got probably have a little more callers and more people want to be involved in the show, and it's getting late for me. But Wade, I just want to ask you, how many times was the bitchometer reset tonight? I counted at least 4.
I only caught 3. Who
I feel like didn't Ospreay say bitch? I felt like someone else said it before Swerve did, and then obviously you had Okada and Mercedes, but I don't know. It just felt like
So I'll do a search for the word bitch in my TV report. So bitchometer reset by Will Ospreay, and then it was reset by Swerve, and then it was reset by Mercedes. So I have 3.
Wow.
Okay.
Were there no bitches in Max Caster's rap?
Oh, there could have been. He did mention he mentioned dirt sheets and the torch, and then a week or 2 ago he reset the bitch meter 14 times. I think he's got a personal thing with me. It's I think he's I don't know. It just he mentioned whatever leaking stories to dirt sheets and closed with the word torch. So I was like, I feel like he's talking to me. I don't know. Could just be me.
Maybe.
He probably did say bitch, and I didn't pick up on it. There was a lot there, but it was a fun. What'd you think of the rap, Stephanie?
The video. I don't know. I thought it was a little corny. I think Max and the Acclaimed have lost a lot of their cool factors. So when I saw him come on the screen with another rap video, I wasn't very excited about it. I feel like the Acclaimed they just don't have it for me right now. And it's Caster. It's a factor still with Billy Gunn, right? But it's definitely more Caster than Bowens. Bowens feels like he's being held down a little bit by Max Caster, and it's just not the same vibe as it was a year ago or so. It just feels a little tired. So when he came with another video and the Elite are kind of always hard to take serious. So then when you put them against like Caster rapping to it too, I was just a bit like, oh, okay, we're still going with this, are we? Right. But
Yeah.
I don't know. But now that I know that Max is listening, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's brilliant.
Just buried him for 5 minutes, but yeah, he's good.
I think the mustache is working. It's good to change up your look. Scott, what do you think of the Acclaim video since you brought it up?
Honestly, I liked it. I started jamming to it. It was kind of funny, and I thought the guys that played the Young Bucks. At first, I thought one of them was Adam Rose. If you remember from the Rosebud, so I had to look twice. I'm like, okay, that wasn't him, but I don't know. It was a little cutesy rhyme. But the one thing that ran through my mind is, last week you had the Elite in their role of like cutting off, Britt Baker, and this week nothing. Like, so they have nothing to say. They're there, like so they couldn't commandeer the truck like they do normally and just cut the video off. Like, who? I don't know. That whole thing is just stupid. I mean,
they could have cut to the Bucks like running backstage to the production truck, and like a little inset screen, but they were on the other side of the arena or something like that, and they didn't get there in time. And they're like, cut the video, and then Tony Khan or whoever the director, better not Tony Khan, someone else just goes, it just finished. And like, Nick throws a fit, and Matt's like, Brandon, and then blame Brandon or something. They could have, but in a way, you don't want to distract from the work of art that is an Acclaim to be. They put a lot into that, so
true.
They could have just cut to the Bucks getting to the truck after the video ended and pounding on a door, someone going, stop this video, and then Tony Schiavone could have said, haha, they were too late. The whole delineation of power is a mess, but I think we're gonna have to live with it.
Right. Well, there was a lot that Dynamite gave us in these 2 hours, so there's a lot more I can bring up, but leave it to the other callers and the other guests. So thanks again for having me on, and maybe hopefully talk to you on Friday night.
That'd be great. We'll be here Friday after SmackDown. Love to see you again. Thanks.
Oh, perfect. All right,
cool. Take care. Yep. All right. Let's bring Nick from Brattleboro on. Been getting emails from you, Nick, forever. I always love saying Brattleboro. And you've been a regular caller to the Blog Talk radio format for a while. It's great to meet you here in video format.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. And before I start, I just want to say that I think Stephanie is a great addition to the PWTorch. Excuse me, Fred, the cat has to interrupt.
I love it.
Anytime I start talking on the phone, he's got to be, Zoom meetings. He sits on the computer.
I saw the tail.
Nope, there it is again. But no, Stephanie, I think you've been a great addition to the crew. I love hearing your perspective, and your accent is great. I love it. So welcome, Nick. Welcome to the family. And I'm trying to get my camera focused on me here. There we go. I know everyone's been talking about Mariah and Tony, and I just want to say that I think what they've done with Britt to basically raise Sasha, Mercedes up and into full heel mode has been great. Do you realize Britt didn't say a word tonight, and yet she was a star? I mean, I know, Wade, you're always talking about a star, and she just was out there she beat up the security guys again. I'm sorry, but she just
that's nice.
she without saying a word, she's a star. And I think by having her as the foil to Mercedes is really going to help Mercedes, because I think Mercedes' launch with AEW was just not good, and I think she's now fully into her heel mode. She's talking about the Elite, and I think the two of them, are going to have a great several-month feud. I'm hoping.
Stephanie.
I think that so you know, Wade, you asked around whether or not Mercedes was a heel, famously, right?
Yeah.
And no one could tell you. And she really felt like the first a couple of months of her run that she was almost lacking in self-awareness of not being a heel, especially not just like her feud with Willow, where she clearly should have been a heel, but then after she beat Willow and then came out the next week and congratulated, you know, Willow for being such a great opponent. And I was just watching like, oh, so she's actually not a heel still. Wow. But clearly someone had to say to her, like, if you're going to do this with Britt, you are going to have to take a heel role. And so it's good to see her now fully embrace it. I think she works being aligned with the elite, because I do think that CEO is the probably worst nickname a wrestler can have in a company like AEW, where we're all so aware of the different positions of everyone between Tony Khan and the Bucks and Kenny. But I have to say that I thought this week, when she came out and promoted, I did think her promo was pretty bad. Just her delivery of it. I think she does sound very scripted. And just the way her voice goes up and down, I wish that she would maybe have some kind of lessons with delivery, because that's just what makes it sound so robotic. And so that it like I saw someone in the chat there say that she always looks pleased that she's remembered her lines, and there's definitely nothing about Mercedes promo that makes you feel like she's talking off the top of her head. And this is where my worry comes, because Britt, I think, is probably the best promo in the women's division, and we have been missing her a lot while she's been away. And she was so great when she returned, and just hearing Mercedes speak tonight, I was like, oh, when you and Britt have to go up against each other for a couple of weeks leading to this match, I think Britt is really going to cook you, and she's going to do it off the top of her head. She's going to do it off the cuff, and I think that's going to make Mercedes wobble a lot in the live format. So I wonder how harmonious this feud might be, even behind the scenes, just because I know that Britt is... I think she is going to show Mercedes up, like, especially on the mic. But I think that this is probably the biggest feud that AEW is going to do in the women's division. And I hope they do it right. But I was very impressed by Britt this week. Of course, she's a star. She's a homegrown AEW star. And she's someone that, like, initially got herself over when she was injured, just coming out there every week and making her presence felt. And she's been sorely missed. But yeah, I really do wonder how Mercedes is going to fare with her week to week in front of a live crowd.
I thought the way she eased into the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be in Calgary was really good. I think she should be kind of proud of herself from that. And I love Shivani just going, that's sacrilege. Like, he's just so offended by it. I thought that was a good, memorable moment in the show. And it makes her seem kind of, snide and smarmy and snarky. Copyright Paul Heyman. He doesn't do that anymore, because I just say it all the time. That's his thing. So he stopped alliterating 3 words, although his character has advanced beyond that. They used to do it before the Bloodline all the time. Yeah, so I don't know. I thought I'm maybe a little higher on Mercedes this week, but I mean, to me, there's more room to be annoyed by somebody when they're a heel. Like, I'm just like, it's endearing for the character, or it's helpful for the character now for her to. A lot of the criticism of her is going to work in the role that she is in now. Who was I saying in WWE that fit? Somebody who was, I don't know, I can't remember, but it reminded me of analysis. This is something I did in recent weeks on somebody else, kind of lining up with their direction. Can't think of it right now, but anyway, Nick, back to you.
Yeah, just to let you know, my phone is like down to its red battery life, so I'm gonna be quick and get off, and I'll I kind of have been taking a little bit of a break from watching wrestling consistently, but I'm back, and so good. Nick from Brattleboro will be back, and
excellent.
I want to advocate, as Sean did a while ago, if he's listening. Sean, how you doing? I think we need to do a Nikki's Club Friday night SmackDown Sean, Nick Barbatti, and Nick Morgan to just bury Wade somewhere and just take over the show. So thanks for being there. I love the new YouTube use, and Stephanie, you keep rocking it, and I'll be listening, and I'll talk to all you guys soon.
Thanks,
The
Nick.
chat room says welcome. Sorry for stepping on that. The chat room says welcome back. Please come back, Nick. We miss you. So yeah, good to have your voice and connect a smile to your voice too, Nick. Thanks.
And I just want to show you. There's Fred.
Oh, hi, Fred's leg.
Hi, Fred.
I can't quite see Fred's
there,
face.
there.
There, yeah. Oh, there's
There we
the
go.
ear. Yeah.
There he is.
Oh, there. Profile shot. Awesome.
Yeah.
My
He's a
cats
big
stay out of
fat
it. My cats have been not bothering me during the show lately, and my dog used to hang out in here, and now he knows he gets no attention, so he's elsewhere.
How's the
but one of
robot?
these days, they'll. What's that?
How's the robot?
Oh yeah, where is he? Gosh,
Stephanie,
I don't know.
ask
Oh,
him
you know, I
about
see
the
him.
robot.
Yeah. Maybe I'll
My cat-
get up and go ahead, Stephanie. I'll go get
I
the
was
robot.
gonna- My cat is fast asleep, and you probably can't see her, but she's like fast asleep on my bed, and she's all curled up, and she actually looks quite like Fred as well. But she can sleep through anything.
Yep. All right. Well, listen. Good night, folks. And again, thank you so much for taking. Oh, there he is. I love it.
Oh,
So what's sad for people wondering why he doesn't make noise in the background is he's got a battery that burned out, and I went online and it's like you need a soldering iron to replace the battery. This poor guy, you can't just like take a screw and put a new like watch battery in or something. So, but I do want to bring him back to life one of these days. But he's adorable when he's powered up. So yeah, he's still
right.
the mascot,
Well-
even though.
Well,
is just
everyone
in
go
permanent
VIP.
coma.
Go
Thanks,
by VIP, and I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it very much. Love the endorsements. I'll put that graphic on the screen as Nick says bye, and then we'll get to Rude Dog. You are up next. We can try to squeeze on one more video caller in if somebody wants to give us a call if they're a VIP member, Patreon supporter. Otherwise, we'll get to emails and then wrap up the show. So let's go to Rude Dog. Rude Dog, welcome. Hendrik, formerly of Portland.
Now in Jersey.
You got your
Nice.
Yeah, now in Jersey. Yeah. I mean, I don't like to say that too much. We want to, demographically, we don't want too many people from Jersey on the show. So.
Well,
No,
it's nice to talk to you, Wade.
Jersey's
Nice
fine.
to talk to you, Stephanie.
Jersey's a fun place.
hi.
Yes. You got your notes. I like it.
So I'm kind of picking the bones like a buzzard now because you kind of went through all my notes, but I still got something left to say. So there was the 4-way international match today, which I thought Kyle Fletcher was actually going to win. He seemed like he was going somewhere, but then he got basically banished to Ring of Honor. Didn't see him for months. Do you think they dropped the ball on him, or does he still have a chance to make a comeback on AEW?
I mean, he's going to be a project, Stephanie. I mean, they have not protected him, and that's fine, I guess. But yeah, what do you think of how they've treated him, and is he, as Rude Dog asks, damaged goods?
No, I don't think he's damaged goods at all, really. Like I think they've done really well by him, considering his tag team partner Mark Davis isn't with him right now, and so they've given him like a little singles run, and he always has that connection to Ospreay that I think is going to play like a big part in his future. He's kind of on like a bit of a Daniel Garcia like trajectory of being that like younger guy with connections to the guys that are higher up. So I would actually I'd be pretty happy if I was in Kyle Fletcher's position. He's very, very young. I worked with him just during the pandemic when he was in Rev Pro, and he came back and was like twice the size that he was when he left before. And now he's in like such good shape, and he's someone that Ospreay, I think, has mentored and taken care of really well. And I think he'll have a whole other like great storyline to step into when Mark eventually comes back. So I think, yeah, I would be happy if I was in Fletcher's position as well, because I think it could have gone like a lot worse for him with the tag team not currently being going.
He's really good. And I think he's got, he's sort of in the Ludwig Kaiser realm where it's like, okay, every time he's there, he's good. So I hope Tony Khan is like, all right, maybe, 6, 8, 9. And I like him as a singles wrestler too. So 6, 9 months from now, imagine giving him the push Ludwig Kaiser's getting in WWE. And so let's start building the foundation for that. So it's believable. And he's got a resume to justify what eventually is a push. That's what I'd advocate for Root Dogg. I mean, the bumps he took in this match were amazing. Not even like overly showy. He walks right up to that line, but it's not like Shawn Michaels bumping for Hulk Hogan where it's like, hey, look at me, I can, draw attention to myself. It's just he's selling for power moves that his opponent gives him, and obviously had with Pac and Ishii especially some opponents to really sell for. Root Dogg, back to you.
And they just barely like brushed past it, but is Pac for sure going to be wrestling for the the International Championship at Wembley?
They put a graphic on the screen advertising that. So yeah, I think so. Am I right in that? Did they put a graphic on? Now I'm starting to wonder if that was the Ospreay MJF graphic I'm thinking of. But what do you remember, Stephanie, from that?
I honestly don't remember much other than Pac saying that he was going to have a big match at Wembley, but I can't remember if he is going for the international title or not. Especially with them announcing the Ospreay MJF match, because I don't know, to me neither of them make sense as Pac's Wembley opponent. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure on that. A lot happened on this show.
Right.
I know. Yeah, I'm starting to reevaluate whether they cross the line into doing too much on this show instead of.
Yeah, I'm just reading like the report, and it says that Pac says it's all in season and he won't be denied his Wembley moment, but I don't see anything definitive about what he's doing. Yeah. Maybe someone in the chat can help us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Root Dogg.
Apparently it was just a shot at the winner. Mentioned Wembley, but I don't think it was definitive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just a shot at the winner. Yeah. They left it open-ended. Seems to be the consensus view at this point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So a different subject, Collision is really fell down to the wayside. Like the only thing they bothered to advertise was Takeshita versus the new Dynamite Kid for next Saturday. What is going on with Collision? Is it just 2-hour Rampage now? Have they given up on it?
Well, they loaded it this past week, and it was a weird time to do it because it was up against Money in the Bank. They drew 306,000 viewers, down from 421, 429, 431 the previous 3 weeks. That's a really small audience to see what was a loaded show. I included it in this week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, and I usually don't. I included my report on it. They did a lot on Collision. That MJF promo was one of it, and then you had the Hangman Jay White match. I know there's some things that I saw online only that I weren't part of the show. Matt Menard's follow-up promo where he's all bloody and fired up and saying, I'm going to let Danny Garcia get his hands on you first, and you don't know when it's going to come. Jack Perry with the Marco Stunt, a special appearance, a surprise appearance. They didn't advertise it, but it was a newsworthy show, and it was one of the better episodes I've watched start to finish of Collision in a while. And now I was thinking, well, maybe they're going to try to get that back. And I don't know if maybe Root Dogg, they under pushed it strategically so that it doesn't burn out the audience, because Tony really wants Dynamite to shine the next few weeks. I mean, and it also could just be, my God, Tony looked at a sheet and go, we're promoting way too many matches for Dynamite. Let's not overdo it with Collision. But that might be maybe the first time he's ever said something like that. So maybe not. Anyway. Yeah. And Collision had Ramen Noodle in the chat room says Collision's been very good the past few weeks. Some of us are still watching. Stephanie, what do you think of the state of Collision and Rude Duck bringing up only one kind of mid-card match being thrown out there?
Yeah, when I saw the lineup for last week's Collision, especially having the Hangman Jay White match on it, which is like the match that most interests me as a big fan of both those wrestlers, I was totally shocked that was happening on Collision, because I know that it does still have its weekly fans, but it has certainly fallen off a lot in the past year. Not as much as Rampage, which is kind of a no-go zone for everyone other than the complete hardcores. And I honestly think they loaded it so much last week just because of the timing of everything. How they, whatever time that Hangman Page was ready to come back and MJF was ready to come back, I think they didn't have enough weeks to properly space everything out, because I really think that Hangman and Jay White should have been on a Dynamite. Like, these Owen Hart matches should be happening on Dynamite. But then at the same time, you don't want to just throw Collision away and not put anything good on it. But I don't think enough people saw the great stuff that was on Collision, such as MJF, Daddy Magic's promo, and the big Hangman and Jay White match. So I don't know what Tony Khan's plan is for Collision. I think his current plan is just hoping he gets all his TV deals sorted, and then maybe when that happens, we can rethink what we're doing with the non-Dynamite shows, Collision and Rampage.
Yeah, I think get that TV deal, and then we'll see. I know the NBA has announced all their, ESPN, ABC, NBC stuff. TNT has a chance to match. I don't have enough expertise to know if there's even a chance of that happening. But yeah, it's like resorting it out. Amazon Prime has this and that, and the NBA is like, there's going to be some games on Sunday nights and Mondays and all that. There's different priority levels for the NBA. There's the big matches on or the big games on ABC, and then it kind of is a dribble down after that. AEW is going to have the same thing. I mean, they have to have their priorities, but I mean, Rampage, like you said, Rampage is just, it's like this almost asterisk. It's become like an hour of AEW Dark. So I don't know. I mean, I repeating myself when I say this, but I would have been an advocate for Tony going, we're going to forego TV revenue. We have deep pockets. We want everyone to watch Dynamite. We want our booking tight. We're going to learn our lessons from Raw going to 3 hours, which hurt in intangible, unmeasurable ways. And the measurable way that Thunder and a 3-hour Nitro hurt WCW greatly in so many different ways that has been documented and written about in real time by me and talked about since then by so many. I just wish Tony learned that lesson and just made Dynamite a must-see show. I think they'd be in a much better position. I mean, NXT is really close this week with their number to what Dynamite did the last 2 weeks. They're both in the 600s. Tony wants bragging rights. I just wish he had a 2-hour show that was all he did up to this point, and worry about the money later. But anyway, it's his decision, and they'll probably make a little bit more money, but how much damage is being done to Dynamite in the meantime? That you just don't know. Anyway, Rude Dog, back to you.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, I mean, I watched NXT yesterday, and they're doing some fun stuff with all the TNA crossovers. And, like, I mean, I think Kelly Wells said yesterday, like, TNA is more over in NXT than it is in TNA. It's amazing.
And WWE's retweeting, like, TNA graphics for, I mean, it's weird. It feels like Bizarro world right now.
And one thing I was surprised, this is a quickie, there was a Colt Cabana sighting today. I didn't even know he was still with the company. Did you?
No, I didn't see it. When was it?
It was after the Jericho drove the forklift with Samoa Joe through the wall. He came in and I think they said he was a producer or something, or an agent.
Wow.
But yeah, there was Colt Cabana on screen. I was like, whoa, I didn't even know he was still a part of anything, but that was interesting.
Stephanie, you're losing it. What's going on?
I am. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I laughed out loud when Colt Cabana appeared during that whole Jericho thing. I thought, like, I did think his acting was really bad. It was almost as bad as the wall for taking me out of it. So I had to have a laugh. And then I also thought about when was the last time I saw Colt Cabana, and I'm not sure exactly when it was, but the time that sticks out was when he got the Ring of Honor title shot against Jericho, and they tried to make it seem like it was actually legitimate when really it was probably just to anger Punk. And then Colt Cabana accidentally bought the wrong socks at Walmart, so he wrestled in compression socks and like ended up in the hospital or something. So I think that was Colt Cabana's last
Oh my
TV
God! Now I know why you're
appearance.
laughing. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah, he really made me laugh this week on Dynamite. I don't know if that was his intention during that angle, but that was something. And I know people think that Jericho, some elements of his character are based on Punk. Some of the stuff that he's doing, this like, oh, I'll help you, and like some of the lines that he's doing as well are in reference to Punk things, and Punk thinking he was a locker room leader and helping out the young guys. And honestly, if he's influenced by Punk or trying to make fun of Punk in any way, that's really pathetic, because WWE is actually doing an on-screen storyline about a man, Drew McIntyre, that's being driven mad, being obsessed with Punk. So if you're on the other channel still trying to take digs at CM Punk, you're really stupid. And then the fact that they showed Colt Cabana this week made me go, oh gosh, maybe he really is trying to like get to Punk or something. And if so, man, just give it a rest. Punky ain't thinking about you anymore. So you know.
Yeah. It's I mean, the digs at AEW on Raw, the little references are, I mean, they're Easter eggs, and then they're obvious to some people, and it feels petty, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of fun from a distance, but it doesn't seem to be bogging down anything they're doing. It's not like distracting. It's not the centerpiece of what they're doing. It's more just, little signals, little Easter eggs to people. Rude Dog.
All right. Well, one last thing. This one's more directed to Stephanie. I was at Forbidden Door as well on Long Island, and that was my 10th pay-per-view for AEW, I believe. And I thought the crowd was kind of in the middle of the road. Like, it was a good crowd, but they weren't totally into stuff, but it was still a good crowd. I'm not sure how many events you've been to before, but how would you I mean, that was the last pay-per-view for AEW. So how would you state the state of the union of a pay-per-view crowd in AEW?
I thought this one, I thought it was a bad crowd. Apart from Swerve and Ospreay definitely got them up, and they were definitely presented a really long show, so it was good that they did come up for the main event. I think you could really tell the matches that they were invested in. I thought because I feel even with Mercedes and Stephanie, they were more invested in the Boston stuff surrounding Mercedes than actually the match. And I think people's reaction to it on TV was maybe better than the crowds. And I particularly liked the Orange Cassidy and Zach match. And then a lot of people said to me, watching at home, they couldn't hear the crowd. And I don't think that they were hot for it. As far as where I'd rank it, I think the worst, I've been to about 20 live AEW shows, everything from Dynamites to pay-per-views. I think the worst one I've been to was Double or Nothing last year, so not the most recent one. I thought that was the worst crowd, that Vegas crowd. I think they were already half dead, but they were murdered by Jericho and Cole, and it never really recovered. I was at Dynasty as well. I wasn't at Double or Nothing, but I thought the Dynasty crowd were really, really hot. And the Forbidden Door crowd just didn't compare to them. But I do think it might be an unfair comparison just because it was this co-promoted show, and maybe it would be different if it was all AEW versus AEW matches, because I think some of the things the crowd just weren't too into the guys, and there wasn't a big story behind it. Something like Moxley Naito, I don't think people were that up for seeing Moxley and Naito defend, other than the pocket of people that will always Naito, and stuff like the learning trios match as well. And yeah, I don't think they were a great crowd. I'd probably rank them the second worst of the events I've gone to, but I'm not sure if that's a Long Island thing or a Forbidden Door concept thing or a true assessment of where AEW is right now, because I'd be very surprised with how things are going on TV if the next pay-per-view crowd, the All-In crowd, are not hot for it.
Yeah, good take, and that's interesting with a big sample size like that. Rude Dog, anything you want to follow up on there what Stephanie said, or anything else about?
No, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
So,
great talking.
Before you go, we gotta talk. What's the story on your T-shirt?
Great Muda.
When'd you get it though? It's clearly for people listening and not watching. It's a Great Muda T-shirt. See the green tongue. Where'd you get it?
It's a suplex shirt out of the UK. It's actually glow in the dark, supposedly, even though I can't ever get it to really glow in the dark. But Suplex has some great T-shirts. I have plenty of their stuff, and yeah, I recommend it.
Excellent.
Check it out.
I always like to see what you're wearing. Thanks, Rude Dog. Thanks, Hendrik.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Yep. Stephanie, anything else you want to say about kind of point people towards your Substack, plug that specifically, and tell us a little bit more about what you wrote about contrasting the two pay-per-views you went to?
So my Substack, you'll find just searching Stephanie Chase, but it's like stephaniechase.substack.com. And yeah, I decided I was in quite a unique position being able to go to these two big events days apart. So I thought, why not compare them? And there were some stark differences that I saw, like the crowd energy and excitement around Money in the Bank, like eclipsed anything Forbidden Door. Like I just talked a little bit about how the crowd were, and Money in the Bank, like for every match they were hot. And I think to me it was because every match in Money in the Bank felt consequential, even if it might have not have been like a dream match or the biggest match you could do. Like everything had consequences. We were going to have a women's winner, a men's winner. We had the match with the Bloodline. So everything felt like kind of can't miss. And the AEW one, I also talk about like the length of the card. Obviously, Tony thinks he's really giving you value for money, but at the same time, I think he's really stretching his audience about how much wrestling like they can actually take. WWE probably could have used another match or two on that Money in the Bank show, but AEW could have used shaving, like when you include the pre-show, about 5 matches off it, like, to be honest. And there's lots of other things you notice when you go to a lot of shows of the two companies. It is true how much of a bigger brand WWE is and like the machine behind them, but there are so many like little touches that AEW just doesn't do. And something I talk about a lot is their merchandise situation that I just think is appalling. Like,
yes,
it's absolutely
someone needs to ask Tony Khan that. Someone should ask Tony Khan about that in one of his Q&As, because I don't think anybody ever has. Like, why are you? Is it just not important to you, or do you think you're doing a good job, or are you too busy? It's
dreadful. Like at Forbidden Door, they weren't selling a T-shirt for any wrestler. They had a Los Inglables T-shirt from New Japan. That like they didn't have an MJF one, an Ospreay ones, a Swerve one. You know, your world champion. They didn't have that. I often say that like throughout the over 20 shows I've been to, I've never seen a Jericho Danielson or Moxley T-shirt. Now that's not to say they've never been sold at an AEW show, but the ones I've been to, I have never seen one of their T-shirts in sale. And I will literally sit in crowds, and there will be people around me who are casual AEW fans that will be talking about WWE, like, "Hey, Dean Ambrose is on this show. You know, remember Dean Ambrose?" Like, and it's like, why are you not selling the merchandise of the guys that everyone in the building collectively knows? And to compare that to WWE, I saw so many Yeet T-shirts. Everything was Yeet everywhere. And like, he just felt so over. And I think even if you think that, even if maybe there's some great data that Tony Khan has that shows that it's not worth him printing wrestler T-shirts, maybe it's like a loss leader or something, but I think it is worth it to make a guy feel more over. And if you had loads of people in the crowd in Swerve t-shirts, he would feel like as big as superstars they're trying to like project him as, because look at what WWE's been able to do with Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes, you know, getting that tattoo and what it's become with the WWE branding behind it. American Nightmare, everything now. I've got a Pharaoh here, an American Nightmare Pharaoh that I got. Like, that's the WWE merchandising machine, right? And Tony's not printing t-shirts. But yeah, I talk about that. And then I also just talk about like the media experience. Like, to be blunt, like AEW offers you nothing except you go to the show and you go to the scrum. WWE, they do like press events for the media, so you will see like all over your social media feeds, you know, different interviews with different superstars. That they had a live event on Friday where we got to interview like Chelsea Green, LA Knight, people like that. And AEW don't put those little touches. They don't do any kind of junket things. And then I go into the scrums, and I did find the World's End, not the World's End one, sorry, the Forbidden Door one, like particularly frustrating. I think that Tony really doesn't value other people's time. He's quite like willing to like waste it. And yeah, I do mention that I was just particularly annoyed at him just at near 1 a.m. bringing Tony Storm out to be completely in character, do a dance in front of him with 2 other women, and then end it by saying, no questions, all your questions would have been shit anyway, and walking off. And I was just like, should this not have been for like your post-show Twitter thing? Is this really for scrum with the media? It's like 1 a.m. here. And yeah. So anyway, that's, if you all want to like check it out, that's kind of just, I thought an interesting time to directly compare the experiences of the 2 different weekends, since I got to have them all at once.
So James says, where can we find the Stephanie? Explain. People might not know what Substack is, so just give them a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess it's like a blog. It's somewhere where you can just publish your own work. So if you just, I'll try and put like a link to it in the chat maybe. But yeah, if you just search Stephanie Chase on Substack, it should come up. And I have writing about other stuff, wrestling related too, but this is just the most recent one. I'm going to see if I can put that link in the chat here, and maybe that will help. But if you go to my Twitter, which is there at Stephanie M. Chase, it's my pinned tweet as well.
Cool. Excellent. All right, let's just wrap up with some emails that came in here. James in Clemson said, Wade and Stephanie, life has been crazy lately in a good way. Good. And I've essentially been a YouTube wrestling fan for the past few months. I'm loving what WWE is doing and have been stagnant about AEW for the most part. Last week's episode of Dynamite enticed me, though, so I decided to watch it live this week. The main thing I liked about last week's episode was the work AEW put into building and advancing storylines on Dynamite and Collision. This week feels like a complete opposite, and I remain frustrated with this show. Tony Khan showed his true colors again this week, that he is impulsive, irrational, and incapable, trademark Paul Heyman, of seeing the big picture. There was just too much hot-shotting on the show for no reason. So my question for you guys is whether you think the Mariah May turn was too soon or not. With the pay-per-view over a month away, it just feels like this turn could have meant so much more if they would have waited a few more weeks. What do you think? P.S. It's been great watching and listening to you on YouTube lately. I love the platform, and it's been great to put faces to so many familiar voices. Keep up the good work, and everybody go VIP. Also, one more thing. I believe in Joe Hendry. I can't get that dang song out of my head, and I love it. Joe Hendry Mania. So, Stephanie, I mean, we talked obviously plenty about Mariah May. We don't need to revisit that necessarily unless you got something new to add. But another vote for this being too much. And I think it's really interesting hearing from James, who has been watching clips, YouTube, social media, whatever. And he came back, watched the whole show, and he felt a little overwhelmed. How do you feel about that?
I do get where he's coming from. I think we had this conversation earlier about whether or not there was too much, and I think it Derek that was saying that he thought it was a good amount, and I thought it was maybe a little too much, and I really felt that after kind of realizing that I'd almost forgotten about like that Swerve Okada, which is a huge thing. So I think I do think Tony is hot shotting things a little bit, but I'm going to try and give him the benefit of the doubt because I think at least he's currently creating interesting and compelling television.
Yeah. Your camera froze. You probably are aware of that, or at least for me.
Yeah, I know it froze because I tried to put my link in, so it was my own ego defeated me there.
No, you're serving the listener's curiosity, and let's not don't selfie face that it's an ego thing. If you want to exit and try to come back, you can. If otherwise,
I might do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I will read the next question. It's more of a comment from Chris from Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I love it. Hello, Wade, and beautiful guest, Stephanie. Sorry, Wade. You look great, too. Thank you. This is my first time seeing the video review. I'm a fan for sure. Just wondering what you two think of the Mariah May turn on Toni Storm. I did not see that coming at all. I thought at the very least Toni may turn or cost Mariah May the match inadvertently. The aftermath of their match was very impactful and had me standing up on my sofa. Mariah now looks like a legit badass. So the reason that I'm in favor of this happening now, and I talked about it earlier, but I'll elaborate slightly. Here's wait for Stephanie to come back in. Is it allows us to just get to the next stage. Somebody in the chat room had mentioned that, they had enough. Like this felt stretched out, and they, to me, I'm just ready for the next chapter. And so now we are ready to get the next chapter. And so having a chance to get the next chapter quickly so we can see if, and I don't know if you heard, but Chris from Truth or Consequences, Stephanie said, Mariah now looks like a legit badass. He said he was standing on a sofa because of the post-match. I just think this was a storyline that kind of meandered. I mean, it was there, but some of it happened on Collision. It seemed like they kind of changed their mind early on, maybe about where they wanted to go. I'd have to go back and review it to refresh why I thought that. But this just sets it up. Like, we just know who's who now, where they're going to be. And yes, we got weeks of television now, but not 2 months. I mean, it's like, I want to hear from Toni Storm. I want to see Mariah May show this other side of her, explain herself. We have a lot of people explaining things these days. Hangman Page, MJF, like, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. You got to be careful you don't do too much of it, but or find different creative ways to do it. But I'm looking forward to it. I think they can make this work. Stephanie.
Yep, this was definitely the most interesting thing they could have done with it. It has been a little slow for a while. And I wasn't like a big fan of like the most recent with Mina involved. I know a lot of people liked her, but there was a lot about that storyline that I just wasn't too keen on. But this is something completely different. There was so many ways they could have gone with it with Mariah. And she's been so like almost like submissive to Toni, and Toni like being her idol and everything, that it's just way more interesting now to know that she actually hates her and wants to bloody her up. And I think that's the best direction that they could have taken it.
All right, let's go to JB in Detroit. Some of the stuff we talked about, some we didn't. Wade, you must. Oh, by the way, we've got over 1,000 people watching us. A lot of you on Twitter. If you want to be in the chat room or join us, if you want to be part of the chat, you've got to go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/PWTorch, and you can join us there. And that's how you can have your chats be part of the show. Just wanted to point that out again, because I know some people come and go on these YouTube shows because, we go long and people are doing other things. All right, JB from Detroit says, Wade, you must be happy that Dynamite opened with MJF's promo from Collision last Saturday, while also cutting out most of the ratings and meta stuff that you didn't like. That's checking off like 3 of your approval boxes. Yes, I love that. People listen to me a lot know my approval boxes. The Bitchometer got reset 3 times, so I don't know that I can call this a great victory week. But yeah, I saw they were doing a video package, and I was like, yeah, you have to do that. You're going to have way more than twice as many viewers watching this show than watch Collision. It was a major statement promo from MJF. They needed to do it. And I'm glad about the editing. I did. I was critical of, I said this on the Wade Keller hotline earlier for VIP members on the podcast RSS feed, that I didn't like, and he touched on it a little bit again tonight, but not too much. And I said he walked up to the line. It's a better version than most, but he talked about, Will Ospreay, you're into star ratings and I'm into TV ratings. And my critique of that is MJF, once he gets going in that direction, it can go too far. And AEW has a tendency to go too far with that. To me, MJF should be about, I want to dominate AEW by winning all my matches and being world champion, because that's how I'll get paid the most money, and I'll build up my legacy, and I'll be ruthless about it. And Will Ospreay, you seem like somebody who, if you win a match, you're happy, but if people talk about your match and how good it is, that sometimes is enough for you. And I want MJF to say that'll never be enough for me. And that's why, and then he can say, that's why I draw the most ratings. Like, I don't want him to care about ratings, but I don't mind if he brags about the fact that he draws the biggest ratings. So there's some nuances there, but they didn't emphasize that part of the promo. Now, that was a long promo. They took a lot out of it. I don't know how deliberate that was. But Stephanie, I don't know what you think about that, but how do you feel about TV ratings, star ratings, Meltzer references, all that stuff, making it onto a national television show?
I absolutely hate that. MJF is so frustrating because he's the wrestler that will break character, that will be like, the super mean in character to fans, be it on Twitter and everything. And then he's constantly just coming out on TV and just telling us it's not real by talking about, like, in this world, like, who is Dave Meltzer? Like, how he rates our matches.
Don't get me started. No, I'm kidding.
I know. But I just hate, like, the reference to that and the TV ratings as well. Like, we know this is a televised show. We know this, but it should be a sports contest where, like, they don't care about that. They don't care about
It's a simulation of a sport. It's a simulation of sport. Therefore, it should simulate a sport. Sorry to jump in, but you don't hear NFL players talking about how what's important for them is their team draws the biggest ratings. They want to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And, like, I just think that should be the mindset. And when they stray from it, it can be distracting.
Yeah, I just wish he was focused more on actually telling a story in the ring. Like, he should have tons of reasons to want to beat Will Ospreay and hate Will Ospreay and all of this. Like, he's a guy that's come back after losing his title. We don't need to hear him talk about ratings. Like, the AEW ratings aren't that good anyway, so why are you talking
I know
about
this
them?
is the wrong time to bring it up.
It's not as if this is a show being watched by, like, millions of people a week, and his segments are that much higher. Like, I don't think so. And the Meltzer stuff as well is just, like, really, really cheesy, and we don't need to bring these match ratings into it as well. Like, it's not like, this isn't like figure skating with judges' scores. And even I think Tanya Harding had more of the fight in her to win than MJF seems to sometimes, to tell a serious story. So I don't like it. And
even if it's just like, just pragmatically speaking, I think you're not talking to the audience that you're chasing. AEW is losing viewers. NXT's gaining viewers. Raw and SmackDown gaining or staying flat despite drops in, especially with Raw, drops in cable subscribers. Why are you talking to people who now have to either Google this or, again, there's just, and I think they're better about it lately than they have been they're not at the worst stage, but the Clubhouse secret handshake aspect of so much of the AEW content, we get it in Forbidden Door season, where it's like, I know people who are part of the club and they can, like, list their top 10 Tokyo Dome Wrestle Kingdom matches, and they, bless his heart, as people say, but Excalibur going, I haven't seen Daniel Bryan do that move in over 10 years. Like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know he hasn't done a move in 10 years? Like, unless Danielson said, hey, Excalibur, I'm going to do a move I haven't done in 10 years. And then Excalibur's trying to show what a great memory he has. So wrestling is a nerd fest in an endearing and productive way, but you don't want to make it alienate people who just feel like, God, this isn't for me. I'm not part of this club. And I think they go down that road at their own peril. And so, again, and I wrote this and I talked about it when I did my collision analysis. It comes across like MJF is torn between wanting to draw ratings and just wanting social media buzz. It's ironic. He's criticizing Will Ospreay for caring about star ratings, but MJF's promos are, a lot of the content doesn't seem focused to me on a pragmatic strategy to draw viewers. It seems more like, I want something to give me a sugar rush, a dopamine rush when I get backstage and go to my phone and see what people are saying about what I said. And I think
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does check his
A lot of
phone.
wrestlers do, but yeah.
But I think it's saying all this Meltzer stuff, it makes it so niche, right? Which might be fine in like Ring of Honor like 5-10 years ago, but you are presenting a product that's on national television. So I think at that point we have to get rid of making it seem like this really like niche, super nerdy like interest. Like what AEW should be trying to do is like bring everyone in. So making these like dropping these Meltzer things, it just doesn't work for me. I don't think it's productive.
Yeah. All right. Number 2 from JB says, I thought that it was a good idea to use the Jericho Taz beef to write off Taz for the night so that Nigel could be on the call for the Danielson Owens final. What do you think of Nigel tonight for 2 hours on Dynamite rather than Collision?
For 2 hours, I thought it was too much, to be honest. I thought he served a purpose in the Danielson match because he has the history of Danielson, and I guess he served the purpose of worrying me and you that he might get involved and cost Danielson. But I think by the time we got to the Toni Storm Mariah May match, where the Toni Storm Willow match, where he is Mariah again, where he's at his worst and he named about like 10 Motley Crue songs in the middle of it, I was just like, okay, Nigel, it's time. it's time to put you to bed.
Very good. He also says, I like that Ospreay did his promo from the top rope. It was unique and fits the Ospreay character. Did you like that? I thought that, I don't want him to make it a thing he does every week probably, but I think he said he had a purpose for it. He drew attention to it. But yeah, well, what'd you think about him sitting there?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of it.
Sitting on the top turnbuckle. No, Ospreay.
Ospreay. Ospreay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good visual. It was something different, but no, it's not something like I'd want to see him do every week. But he does have those little touches that I think make him like more like relatable. And considering he is coming off the match loss at Forbidden Door, I thought it was fine for this week.
I'm not sure how I feel about him, like pelvic thrusting. The camera cut to the crowd when he first did it, then they cut back and he did it again. And like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like prudish. I just, again, the word of the moment is pragmatic. Is it really pragmatic to do it? Is it worth it to like make the reference he did? And then I don't know. I just don't think it's great judgment when you're on national cable. I think it's one of those things that's kind of limiting. I don't think the benefit is greater than the turnoff for a lot of people. Is Tony trying to hit a hit? I think there's a word missing. Is Tony trying to hit? Oh, hot shot. That's what it says. Hit. Trying to hot shot a bit, perhaps as a way to cap off the latter stages of TV rights negotiations with MJF Ospreay next week. Will the match ever happen? If it doesn't, with some attack angle, will fans be angry with the bait and switch? Yeah, they will be. Could the match have a screwy finish? Yes, it can. AEW wasn't going to do ref bumps, and now we do ref bumps. I understand it's a 250th Dynamite, but it still seems like a huge match to give away on TV on essentially 2 weeks' notice build. I mean, it could be hot-shotting in the midst of TV negotiations. I mean, in a sense, it's smart to do it that way. WWE is accused credibly of doing that with NXT. Stephanie, you think that could be, if he's in the red zone, as he put it, with negotiations? This would be consistent with hot-shotting.
I think it could be a bit of hot shotting. It could be a bit of his usage of Ospreay is very different to his usage of like a Cody that we didn't get matches from. Like we've had the Swerve match. We're just kind of going for everything. I don't know. It feels like we're ramping up to a season finale or something. Like maybe Tony knows that he hasn't got the TV deal and he's like, right guys, we have to wrap this AEW thing up. So like, let's just go. Only joking, of course. There's plenty more to come, but it feels like hot shotting, yeah. But I do see this match having a definitive finish. Now, maybe MJF does something like the diamond ring or whatever, where we know that he cheated. But I'm giving Tony enough credit to be like, yeah, if you can't book the finish, don't book the match. So I hope it's not a bait and switch, or it's not some kind of completely screwy finish where we don't have a winner. I think I see this more as him giving us a taste of a match we really want, and then when we get the rematch, it will be even bigger. Oh, you muted, Wade.
Yeah, sorry about that. Having the Owen finals, AEW 250, and Blood and Guts back-to-back weeks really makes it feel like Tony's making an honest effort in going all out, pun intended, to make good on July being one of the best months in AEW history. So whatever his motive, this is, I mean, I'm curious what this number, what I don't know what else he can do. I mean, he signed all the big name talent. You know, there's Tease and Ricochet. I mean, that's something that's almost for sure on the horizon. But in terms of putting on content, Owen finals, AEW 250, Blood and Guts, this is going to be a test of what the ceiling is for AEW right now, Stephanie.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting to see what rating we get this week, because the Owen finals were such a big match, and it will be more interesting next week that we're getting Swerve Okada, that I still can't believe, and Ospreay MJF. I mean, if that doesn't pull something huge, then what more tricks can you pull out of the bag? You know, that would worry.
It's long. Then that's where you have to book long term. I mean, you have to think long term, not hot shot. Then you got to go, what are things we can clean up that, you know, with a look at 6, 9, 12 months down the road, building an audience, because every week you put on a good show. You don't overdo it. You don't make people think there's a secret handshake to get in the clubhouse that leaves them confused. You're not hot shotting. You're not being too tawdry. You know, I think sometimes it can be too tawdry to, you know, it's like, oh, the teacher's out of the room, let's swear. And, oh, we're not WWE, so let's, you know, do other gestures and stuff. You know, I mean, I think Max Caster being edgy is fine to a point. There's times when he goes a little further than I would recommend for a national cable show when you're trying to grow your audience. But the idea, I don't mean to do a whole checklist of little things that I think hold AEW back, but I think, you know, I talked about when Paul Levesque took over from Vince McMahon initially, the biggest thing that I noticed, and I coined the phrase an absence of irritants, like he just eliminated irritating things from Vince, but he didn't overhaul the good things about WWE or the big broad identifying framework of how they booked and presented their talent. He just eliminated irritants. And with AEW, I think that's where there could be room for growth. And it might be one of the reasons, not the main, not even top 3, but maybe top 5 reason WWE is growing is they took away some of the irritants that just irked people about Vince McMahon's proclivities and tendencies as a booker. Maybe AEW, you know, Tony Khan step back and just go, what are some things we're doing that the absence of them, eliminating them, would lead actually to some growth? And then long-term plan, better storylines. We talked on depth with our poll, you know, why are you not watching AEW that we ran last month, and got a lot of good feedback. But I think they are addressing quite a bit of it right now, Stephanie. But I think there is, you know, whatever hot-shotting they do, they should be also going, what are things we can just do every week for the next year that'll leave us in a better place a year from now?
I think I do worry when it comes to the hot shotting and the long-term storytelling, because the long-term storytelling is what I've wanted so much, and I think that they haven't done effectively since the Hangman Page crowning, and that was a very long time ago. And the last time we spoke, Wade, was before this Swerve Ospreay match, and you know, we weren't sure who was going to win, but I was thinking the whole time, like, well, I want to believe that they have a long-term story here, and like this is happening. So I have to say I was like a little bit disheartened when the report came out that Will Ospreay just asked for this match to like stop the conversation, which good for you, Will, but should it have been your decision? And that just also made me think like, oh, so this isn't part. I mean, they can turn it into one, but like this wasn't some grand plan of like long-term of what's going to be like a long-term story or something. It's just Will wanted that match, and Tony was like, okay, let's do it. And it's such a big match to have done with that reasoning behind it, if you know what I mean. I don't know. I would have felt differently if Tony had come up with the idea, but yeah, so I'm not fully confident about the long-termness of some of this stuff going on.
We'll close with a question from Rude Dog in the chat room. If you had a promotion that had a wrestler for 5 years, who would you take, Mercedes Moné or Mariah May? What do you think, Stephanie?
This would be my promotion that I'm like starting from the ground like AEW did. So I think I'd actually take Mariah May because she's someone that has a ton of potential, and you can develop her and make her your own. Whereas with Mercedes, I don't know, she's a great wrestler and she would bring you attention, but I think I'd rather invest in a talent like Mariah May if I'm just starting out like AEW did with her and with Jimmy Hayter and with a Britt Baker. That's like the best example of that.
I'll say, ask me in a month. I think we're about to see. This is a test from RMA. You know what I mean? She's been entertaining in her role. This is the next phase of her character. She's going to show range, and we'll see. I mean, by all accounts, from people who've seen more of her than I have, she's going to be good in this next stage. So, yeah, I mean, my leaning is to Mariah May, but I mean, I also am glad Mercedes is in a heel role, and she's, she looks the part. She's got star power. She's got the resume. Yeah, but I mean, she didn't make a difference in the ratings. There's no discernible difference where you would look at a ratings chart. If someone said sometime in the last year Mercedes Moné debuted for AEW and you were just given the numbers but not a date, you would have no idea when she showed up. I mean, there's no evidence of any kind of pop. So, really it comes down to who's, who can you do more with, who's healthier, and then there's some other issues too. Let's see. Lil Cuz says Mariah May against Tiffany Stratton, a dream match. Lady B is sneaking in with a question here before I sign off. Not sure if it's been discussed, but curious from Stephanie's point of view, how she feels about the sales from Wembley so far. They seem low. What's the UK wrestling scene like? Do they seem pumped for this show? I'm sorry, but I've been following wrestling long enough that the advance for Wembley, I haven't seen the latest number, but it is not low according to standards of the last 50 years of wrestling. It's low compared to what WWE's doing these days. It's low compared to last year. But what do you think about the difference in the pace of sales this year versus last year?
Yeah, it's low compared to last year. And I think that was always going to be the issue with Tony making this an annual thing, because the first one did feel so special and so one-off. I can speak to my group of friends and people that I know in the UK who are all super hardcore wrestling fans and are all like AEW fans over WWE fans. They have not bought tickets. They are waiting to
for
try
cheaper
and get
tickets or the lineup.
Cheaper tickets. They're waiting for when the drop comes and AEW want to put more people in the building, and that's a lesson that they learned from last year, honestly. And the excitement in general around AEW, it's cold at the minute. It's hard because the UK doesn't have that many wrestling fans. Like, people over here in Toronto, where I am now, will say to me that, oh, you're from the UK, it's like crazy for wrestling. And I'm like, it's not like day to day. Like, this is a very niche thing. In Canada, I see more people openly into wrestling, but the number of fans that we have in the UK, we're extremely hardcore because we are staying up till like 5 a.m. and stuff like that to watch wrestling, and we have to like work a lot harder when we were younger to get it. So we're very hardcore, but the excitement compared to last year, I think, is lower, and I think that it is due to it being so soon after the last one, the product being a little cold, and WWE being hotter, and WWE being able to pull off something like Clash at the Castle as well.
Do you think they come back a third year?
No. I don't. Because it's interesting that they're doing this Dynamite a couple of days before in Cardiff. So I think that the ticket sales, I think they want to like leave it at this. Like, whatever they get this year is going to be down from last year. And I think they're going to be like, right, that was great. But they'll either move the all-in branding to another big city that's not in America, which I think would be a very good idea. So then All In becomes like an international show rather than a UK Wembley show. And then I think instead the UK audience will get like a week or two in the UK with like different Dynamites in different places and visiting Ireland as well. And I think that would be much better, because if you try and do like a third year at Wembley, unless something gigantic happens with AW business, it's only going to be even less tickets sold. Yeah,
very good. Stephanie, anything else from Dynamite that you want to bring up that somehow we have not covered yet?
I think that the Jericho stuff was just wild. Like, so what is his character? Because he's been doing this truly awful, annoying learning tree stuff that I guess some people do find funny or entertaining, where he's putting on this really awful voice. He's wrestling in the trunks. He's doing everything to be annoying. And then he comes out tonight, and firstly, like, he looks like a totally different person because he's like wearing all black, and he doesn't look like the idiot we've been seeing on TV for weeks. He's still doing the waves, but then he ends up like brutally attacking Samoa Joe and putting him through like a fake wall. And he did do the
real wall, just a prop wall.
And he did do the and he did the fireball last week. So like, what is he doing some really bad kind of like almost like split personality thing, or like the whole bad voice was an act and he's actually really like this unhinged person? Because like there was a switch there when he did the bye-bye where it turned like really dark and sinister, and I'm just like, why? Like I don't know. I think the whole character is like awful. I think he's trying to put these deep layers into it that don't work. And I agree with Lady B that him wearing the trunks when he knows he probably shouldn't is just a rib. But I would say, why would you do that? Like, just why would you do? Like, that's my question. But yeah, it's I don't. What did you think of like this switch at the end of his segment where he then seemed almost sinister when we've been seeing him basically be like a buffoon for weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it might be what you're saying, that he's going to play up the idea that there is I don't know if split personality is the word, or is the direction he'll choose, or if it's going to be more, I've been driven to this based on the crowd reaction or things happening to me, and there's a side of me that is coming out. It's not so much a split personality. And then the other option, I think you covered it too, is just it's a strategy all along, that he's trying to entertain he's trying to be entertaining in a purposefully self-aware, annoying way to counter the please retire chants. And I mean, the genius of it is he was being rejected by the crowd, so he sat down in his laboratory where he reinvents himself, and he said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a character that will explain everyone yelling at me, please retire, and go away, and rejecting me. I'm going to make it so off-putting that it'll come across as if it's the reaction I'm looking for, and therefore I am controlling the fans instead of the fans controlling me. And if you don't pay attention to the order in which they happened, you can have that case. I mean, it ultimately, the character, I think, is based on his insecurity being rejected by the very fans who he felt would be on his side forever, and that he thought he had earned their loyalty. Yeah. A little bit of what MJF covered in his promo, in a different way. I opened myself up to you, and look what you guys did. But now I think he probably thinks for me to have meaningful matches, I have to have an edge to myself and show that there's something I can kind of snap in me that triggers something more threatening, more sinister. And I'm not a lower card comedy figure. I'm not going to become R-Truth or Miz. I want to be more, Bray Wyatt Fiend. I mean, that might be what's going through his head. It's a good observation. We'll start to see next week.
I think, firstly, like, he is an evil genius. And I felt like the best thing that he could do for a man of his age is do something closer to the Painmaker character, where he is like this guy wearing all black brawler type thing. And maybe that's what we're eventually getting with this. I just wish we didn't have to suffer all the other weeks to get to it. I wish that when people were booing him and saying please retire, if this was his plan all along, that he had just done like a hardcore brawler gimmick guy and won the fans over instead of just this nonsense.
Yeah.
But yeah, and poor Samoa Joe and that have been part of this, and Big Bill as well. I don't know. It was a confusing segment.
It was, and I'm sorry, but if you are driven on a forklift through sheetrock, I don't think you end up on an ambulance. I mean, I know they had things tipped over on him and stuff, but I don't know.
I was laughing so much at the segment and finding it so, like, I'm not saying it was like one of the worst segments ever, but like, to me, it was bad and it wasn't giving the reaction that it should have. And I was so convinced that it was that Jericho was going to end up being the one driving the ambulance, I was like, this is getting to that stage.
Wow,
and Jericho cannot get WWE comedy out of his head, that I was like, are we going to get a shot through the ambulance when it's about to drive off from inside? And Jericho turns around and does, "Hi guys," and he's in the driver's seat. Like, I absolutely predicted that to happen. Now, thank God that it didn't. But the fact that I had that thought means like there's been a failure somewhere.
Well, I just say Chris Jericho's watching or listening, going, "Shoot, I should have done that. I missed out on a great opportunity."
He probably is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Stephanie?
No, I think that's it from the show. Like, I think we covered everything, and there was a lot to cover. Yeah,
I don't think we gave enough praise to just the match quality. I think Swerve and Danielson was a really good match. Pay-per-view quality. We focused on the outcome and the promo from Swerve afterwards, but that was really good. I know we're playing up Danielson's neck injury, but I don't think they played it up in a way this week where it's felt like Danielson was trying to convince us, "I'm really hurt this time, guys. This could be the end. I'm really, really hurt." Like, yeah, they had doctors training on, but he wasn't like going into convulsions and stuff like that. I thought it was better than in the past, where it sort of plays on wrestling fans' fears that their favorite wrestler gets legit hurt. I think they struck a good tone and just had a really, really good TV match.
I've never liked the Danielson pretending that it's all over in matches, and I thought that Hangman removing the tape from him felt way more effective and sinister than any time Danielson has acted like he's seriously hurt himself in a match. I thought like that felt more effective to me. But yeah, it was a really, really great match. And like I said, one of my favorite in Dynamite this year. And really, there was some, kind of like messiness with like the ref bumps and everything, but I don't think that it took away from it. I still thought it was great.
Well, Dougie Doug is going to bed. He says good night. Great show. Thank you, Dougie. We have more viewers right now than we did an hour and 2 hours ago. We're at our peak viewership right now. So I feel like why are we doing? I think other shows that people watch ended and they come to us. So watch us from the beginning, and you miss good stuff. We'll wrap up here. I said that before, but Joshua adds the 4-way match was really good as well. Not sure what Ishii was doing there, but he's always welcome. Any thoughts on any other aspect of it other than Kyle Fletcher that we talked about, Stephanie?
I guess Ishii was there because these New Japan guys have to be heavily featured, so we can just kill off the Forbidden Door concept completely. I think that's what Ishii was doing there.
There's some things I would edit out of AEW, and Forbidden Door wouldn't necessarily be an annual event at this point.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, everybody who's joined us, go watch the show from the beginning. If you want to on our YouTube channel, please do. Or you can subscribe to our podcast and listen to it if that's easier and more convenient for you. Just go to search Wade Keller in your podcast app and subscribe to the Red Logo Show. And then also subscribe to our Blue Logo Show. Greg Parks joined me for the flagship yesterday, over 90 minutes of commentary, including some thoughts on the WrestleMania Behind the Curtain special. And got so much, I can't remember right now. It's late. But we talked about a lot of stuff. Go check it out. It's our flagship. It's not on YouTube. It's our kind of center. We talk about all the big issues, not just what happened on TV. And that is available. Search Wade Keller. Subscribe to the Red and Blue Logo shows. They're both free. Or go VIP or support us on Patreon. And then you can have ad-free versions of them where the pre-recorded ads from us and the digital ad insertions from our podcast distributor are edited out. And it is on a podcast feed that is compatible with Apple Podcasts. And if you subscribe through Patreon, that means you can also get the VIP feed on Spotify. So whatever your favorite ecosystem is, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or otherwise, we've got you covered. No passwords to enter. We got a really slick setup. Full details again at pwtorch.com/govip. Stephanie, thank you so much. I love talking wrestling with you, and it was great doing it again here. Thanks for sticking around for over 2 hours. AEW and our callers and emailers gave us a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we complain about Tony Khan's length, and we go long, don't we? But yeah, I had a great time again, and I love talking about AEW with you.
And I will say this, based on our video callers, yes, we go long, but people are just lounging on their couches and their beds, chilling out, listening to us. It's a lot more relaxed than sitting in a chair upright around a bunch of, stinky, smelly wrestling fans for 4 hours.
That is true. That is true.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please do like our show, spread the word, and we'll talk to you Friday night after SmackDown right here on YouTube.